Czechia, Egypt, El Salvador, Estonia, Finland, Gambia, Georgia, Germany, Ghana, Greece, Guatemala, India, Indonesia, Islamic Republic of Iran, Israel, Italy, Kazakhstan, Latvia, Liechtenstein, Mexico, Morocco, Nepal, Pakistan, Panama, Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Spain, Turkey, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, Uruguay, and Vietnam to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the following briefers to participate in this meeting. Mr. Stéphane Dugan, Chief Executive Officer, Cyber Peace Institute, and Ms. Niena Ifeanyi Ajufo, Professor of Law and Technology, Leeds Beckett University. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I also invite the following to participate in this meeting. Her Excellency Ms. Hedda Samson, Chargé d'Affaires ad interim of the Delegation of the European Union to the United Nations, Ms. Roraima Anna Andriani, Special Representative of Interpol to the United Nations, and Ms. Laetitia Courtois, Permanent Observer of the International Committee of the Red Cross to the United Nations. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I wish to draw the attention of Council members to document S/2024/446, a letter dated 7th June 2024 from the Permanent Representative of the Republic of Korea to the United Nations, addressed to the President of the Security Council, transmitting a concept paper on the item under consideration. I now give the floor to the Secretary General, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres.
Mr. President, His Excellency Cho Tae-yul, Foreign Minister of the Republic of Korea, Excellencies, I thank the Republic of Korea for convening this high-level debate on an issue that affects us all, peace and security in cyberspace. Mr. President, breakthroughs in digital technologies are happening at warp speed. From information and communication technologies and cloud computing to blockchain, 5G networks, quantum technologies, and more. Digital advances are revolutionizing economies and societies. They are bringing people together, delivering information, news, knowledge, and education at the tap of a screen or click of a mouse, providing citizens with access to government services and institutions, and supercharging economies, trade, and financial inclusion. But the very quality of seamless, instant connectivity that powers the enormous benefits of cyberspace can also leave people, institutions, and entire countries deeply vulnerable. And the perils of weaponizing digital technologies are growing by the year. Cyberspace has kicked the doors wide open. Anyone can walk through, and many are. Malicious activity in cyberspace is on the rise by both state and non-state actors and by outright criminals. Serious cybersecurity incidents are disturbingly common. From breaches of essential public services like healthcare, banking, and telecommunications, to relentless illicit activity, including by criminal organizations and so-called cyber mercenaries, to a legion of hate merchants littering the information superhighway with fear and division, to the increasing use of cyberspace as another weapon in ongoing armed conflicts. So-called civilian hacktivists are entering the fray and in many cases are blurring the line between combatants and civilians. And the growing integration of digital tools with weapons systems, including autonomous systems, presents new vulnerabilities. At the same time, the misuse of digital technology is becoming more sophisticated and stealthy. Malware, wipers and trojans are proliferating. AI-enabled cyber operations are multiplying the threat, and quantum computing could break down entire systems with its ability to breach encryption. Software vulnerabilities are being exploited, and cyber intrusion capabilities are even sold over the internet. And company supply chains are being actively targeted by hackers with serious disruptive and cascading effects. Ransomware is one grievous example, a huge threat to public and private institutions and the critical infrastructure people depend on. According to some estimates, total ransomware payments reach $1.1 billion in 2023. But far beyond the financial costs are the costs to our common peace, security and stability, both within countries and among them. Malicious activity that undermines public institutions, electoral processes and online integrity erodes trust, fuels tensions, and even sows the seeds of violence and conflict. Mr. President, digital technology offers an incredible opportunity to create a more just, equal, sustainable, and peaceful future for all. But breakthroughs must be oriented towards the good. The new Agenda for Peace places prevention at the heart of all peace efforts. It calls for developing strong frameworks in line with international law, human rights, and UN Charter, and focused efforts by all states to prevent the extension and escalation of conflicts within and through cyberspace. As reflected in the new vision for the rule of law must exist in the digital sphere as it does in the physical world. And I also welcome the General Assembly's commitment to action in this area. This includes its dedicated, open-ended working group on information and communication technology security. States are building on the universally endorsed normative framework of responsible state behavior in the use of these technologies. And they are actively considering the applicability of international law to state activities in this domain. And under the auspices of the General Assembly, Member States are working to reach consensus on a new cybercrime treaty in the coming months. We should deepen cooperation while protecting human rights online. But given the clear and growing links between cyberspace and global peace and security, this Council can also play a key role by integrating cyber-related considerations into your existing work streams and resolutions. This is only the second time the Security Council has held a formal meeting on this issue. But so many of the issues considered around this table are affected by and linked to cyberspace, including the protection of civilians in armed conflict, peace operations, counterterrorism, and humanitarian operations. Integrating this issue into your deliberations would be a useful way to lay the groundwork for more effective responses to this important question. Monsieur le Président,
Mr.
pour garantir la paix et la sécurité dans le monde
Peace and
physique,
security in the
nous avons besoin
physical
de nouvelles
world
approches sur la
demand
paix et
new
la sécurité
approaches
dans le
to
monde
peace
numérique.
and security in the
Le
digital
sommet de
world.
l'avenir qui se tiendra
This
en
September's
septembre
Summit of the
est une
Future
occasion vitale
represents
de
a vital
renforcer la
opportunity
coopération
to
sur les
enhance
défis mondiaux
cooperation on
essentiels
critical global
et de
challenges
revitaliser le
and to
système
reinvigorate
multilatéral.
the multilateral system.
Le pacte que résultera
The
du
pact
sommet
that will emerge
représente
from
une
the
chance
summit
unique de
represents a
soutenir le
pivotal
maintien de la
chance
paix
to
et la
support the
sécurité
maintenance of
internationale
international
dans le
peace and
cyberespace.
security in
Entre
cyberspace.
autres priorités,
Amongst
le
other
chapitre 2 du
priorities,
pacte
Chapter 2 of
vise
the
à
pact
réaffirmer un
aims to
consensus
reaffirm
mondial
global
pour protéger les
consensus
infrastructures
on
critiques
safeguarding critical
contre les pratiques
infrastructure
numériques
against
nuisibles
harmful
et
ICT
renforcer la
practices
responsabilité
and
de
creating
chacun
enhanced
concernant les
accountability
technologies
for
basées sur
data-driven
l'exploitation des
technology,
données, y compris l'intelligence
including artificial
artificielle.
intelligence.
Pendant ce temps,
Meanwhile,
mon comité
my
consultatif de haut
high-level
niveau sur
advisory
l'intelligence
body on
artificielle
AI
finalise
is
son
completing
rapport
its
sur la
final
manière dont nous
report
pouvons
on how we
gouverner
can
l'intelligence
govern
artificielle
AI
pour
for
l'humanité
humanity
en tenant
while
pleinement compte
addressing
des
its
risques et
risks
des
and
incertitudes.
its uncertainties.
Je me réjouis de travailler
I
avec
look
ce
forward to
Conseil,
working with
l'Assemblée
this
générale
Council,
et
the
l'ensemble
General
des États
Assembly
membres
and all Member
afin de
States
faire en
to
sorte
ensure
que la
that
technologie soit
technology is
utilisée comme elle se
focused where
doit
it belongs,
pour œuvrer
on the
au progrès
progress
et à la
and
sécurité
security
de toutes
of
et
all
tous
people
et de la
and
planète
the
que nous
planet
partageons. Et
that
je vous
we
remercie.
share. I thank you.
I thank the Secretary General for his briefing. I now give the floor to Mr. Stéphane Dugan.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, dear Secretary General, Excellencies, Ambassadors. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. It's
Ladies
an
and
honor to
gentlemen,
address
good
you
morning.
today on a matter of critical importance, how to address the evolving threats in cyberspace. As the Chief Executive Officer of the Cyber Peace Institute, an independent and neutral non-governmental organization based in Switzerland, I speak from experience as the Institute offers free cybersecurity to the most vulnerable, namely non-profit, monitors threat actors, provides threat detection and analysis, and advocates for respect laws and norms in cyberspace. As we analyze the evolution of the threat, I would like to address the cumulative effect of serious disruption to the threat landscape, which together, these disruptions directly impact the maintenance of international peace and security. I will touch upon different topics. First off, the proliferation of the threat actors and how it increases the targeting of critical infrastructure, the mutation of the threat today, notably with the convergence of cyber attacks and disinformation, or the usage of cyber attacks to circumvent international sanctions, and the evolution of the threat tomorrow with the unique risk that AI creates to cybersecurity. This evolution creates unique challenges to international peace and security by notably complexifying attribution, meaning identifying the perpetrator or source of a cyber attack or operation. I will start with the proliferation of the threat actors. Since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation, the Cyber Peace Institute is documenting a proliferation of threat actors siding with both belligerents. Warfare is no longer the sole preserve of states. There are a range of non-state actors from criminal groups, activist collectives with geopolitical motives, and other civilians taking part in cyber attack and operation in the context of an armed conflict. They pursue four objectives: to destroy infrastructure, to disrupt the normal functioning of essential services, to synchronize disinformation and cyber attacks, and to steal and weaponize data through infiltration or espionage. In that context, we, Cyber Peace Institute, traced more than 3,000 campaigns of cyber attacks by 127 threat actors, affecting 56 countries and targeting 24 different critical infrastructure sectors. The harm caused by these cyber attacks are felt far beyond the border of the belligerent countries, with close than 70% of all cyber attacks impacting organizations in non-belligerent countries. These metrics are freely available in our cyber attacks in time of conflict platform. So such a proliferation of attacks pose the question of de-escalation in the context of potential cessation of hostilities. How can such threat actors, 127, be made to stop their malicious activities or be brought under control in such circumstances? This proliferation has a direct impact on the security of critical infrastructure. I give two examples to illustrate. In February 2022, a cyber attack using a wiper malware called Acid Rain targeted Ukraine's broadband satellite internet access. The impact was felt beyond the borders of Ukraine. It impacted the functioning of wind turbines across Europe, with a major German energy company losing remote monitoring over 5,800 of these turbines, and thousands of subscribers of satellite internet services in Germany, France, Hungary, Greece, Italy, Poland being affected. Such impacts are not solely happening in time of armed conflict. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the Cyber Peace Institute monitored 500 cyber attacks against healthcare facilities during 2 years of the pandemic. 500 cyber attacks is not even the tip of the iceberg. It's the ice cube that you put on the tip of the iceberg. And just these 500 attacks count for healthcare disruption in 43 countries, led to the theft of 20 million of patients' data, and cumulatively account for disruptive access for healthcare for 5 years, which means cumulation of 5 years of ambulance redirected, appointment cancelled, patient with degraded access to healthcare. But another aspect to the evolving threat is the use of cyber attacks to evade international sanctions and finance illegal activities. As an example, several civil society actors, cybersecurity organizations, and states have analyzed the activities of 2 alleged criminal groups, Kimsuki and Lazarus, whose tactics, tools, processes, and intent have been attributed to the DPRK. These criminal groups coordinate global cyber attacks of all types on the supply chain, ransomware, cyber attacks on cryptocurrency exchange and financial institutions. And beyond the important direct or primary harm of these attacks, they are a vector to circumvent international sanctions. Recent estimates are that more than $3 billion have been gained by Lazarus Group and Kimsuki from such attacks. Such an escalation creates massive harm. The WannaCry attack in May 2017 impacted more than 250,000 of computers in less than 24 hours in over 150 countries, caused significant disruption and widespread impact across healthcare, financial, and transportation sector. To conclude with the evolution of the threats, it is important to foresee new risks, such as the threat of quantum computing on cryptography, this was reminded, and generative AI on criminal models. Since the advent of generative AI and large language models, AI is used by malicious actors to merely augment their capability. It's used today to scale existing processes of what is called the cyber kill chain, which is a standard process that any attackers needs to go through in order to conduct a cyber attacks. Using AI saved time in target recognition, automating vulnerability searches, increasing the production capacity of phishing, for example. This is only the first step, as groups are already experimenting the use of generative AI to automate different parts of the cyber attacks. This bears an unacceptable risk. Successful tests carry the risk of reaching such a level of automation across the cyber kill chain that malicious actor could willingly or accidentally trigger an autonomous cyber attack. So because of the convergence of several cumulative disruption, the proliferation of the threats, the specific new modus operandi to attack critical infrastructure or circumvent sanction, and what is going to happen because of AI or new technology, it is complex to respond through a current strategy. Still, several actions can happen, and I will finish with this. We can operationalize laws, norms, and sanctions, notably through the transparent documentation of violations and a future-looking approach to prevent the malicious use of cyberspace, including the misuse of AI or quantum computing. It is important to call out perpetrators, to enforce sanctions, and to take appropriate and adequate measures. There cannot be de-escalation without attribution. It is critical to inform decision-making about the measures to be taken and the defense to take. Attribution can have a deterrence effect, as holding perpetrator accountable can enable legal and diplomatic responses and strengthen policy development. Finally, measuring what constitutes harm from cyber attack in a comprehensive and measurable manner is adamant. The Cyber Peace Institute is developing such a methodology to measure the harm from cyber attack because to date, cyber attacks are too much described in loss of money or loss of capacity. The harm to human, population, social construct is important. So these aspects are critical to maintaining international peace and security. Thank you for allowing me to address this esteemed session today. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Duguin for his briefing. I now give the floor to Madame Niena Ifeanyi Ejiofor.
The United Nations Secretary General, the Presidency of the UN Security Council, Your Excellencies, I feel privileged to have been asked to address this esteemed forum on maintaining international peace and security and addressing evolving threats in cyberspace, particularly by providing a regional perspective and looking at the situation in Africa. Mr. President, as we discuss peace and security in cyberspace, there is a need to measure the security of cyberspace through existing regional realities and perspectives. We must acknowledge that the effective realization of cybersecurity often collides with the realities of developing states, especially those in the African region, which remain at the end of the digital divide and lack adequate capacity, skills, and infrastructure to effectively ensure peace and security at anticipated standards. Therefore, as we acknowledge our cybersecurity commonalities, we must also acknowledge the differences and challenges amongst regions and consider cyber threats in the context of country-specific and regional-specific realities. The peace and security dimensions of cyber domain has become a fundamental agenda for many regions. For example, the African Union Peace and Security Council, for the first time, approached the issue of peace and security in cyberspace from the perspective of regulating it with the rules of international law only in November 2022. The African Union thereafter has adopted cybersecurity as a flagship program of the African Union Agenda 2063 and a cross-cutting theme of the African Union Strategy for Digital Transformation. Importantly, the African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection, which provides a unified regulatory framework for mitigating cyber threats and protecting ICT infrastructure, entered into force in June 2023. In January of this year, the African Union also adopted a common African position on the application of international law to the use of ICTs in cyberspace. I must add that the African position is the first position document on the application of international law in cyberspace that includes a section on capacity building. Africa is also the first region to develop a regional common position. Mr. President, we must also acknowledge that there are various challenges to how regions can maintain peace, security, and stability in cyberspace. Since last year, for example, we have seen cyber attacks on the African Union Commission headquarters, which compromise the functioning of email systems. The Kenyan Communications Authority announced that in 2023 alone, Kenya recorded 860 million cyber attacks, with sophisticated attacks targeted at the country's critical information infrastructure. In July 2023 alone, Kenya suffered a high-profile cyber attack on the very important e-citizen platform, which incapacitated access to over 5,000 government services from ministries, county governments, and agencies. A group which terms itself as Anonymous Sudan declared responsibility for these cyber attacks in Kenya and other parts of Africa. Few months ago, this year, organized cyber attacks forced the government of Malawi to suspend the issuing of passports following a cyber attack on the Immigration Services computer network, which was termed a serious national security breach. There are significant issues in this context. Firstly, the blurry lines of state actors and non-state actors' responsibility, and the dynamics of how these emergent cyber threats add cleavages to already existing conflicts. We see how the activities of organized terrorists and extremist groups are further enabled by conflicts in regions like Africa. Criminal activities in cyberspace are not only exacerbating existing threats and challenges to international peace and security in the region, but we also see how states breach international human rights on the alibi of cybersecurity through shutting down internet access, especially during armed conflicts. These actions not only infringe on the rights to communication and freedom of information of citizens, but have also prevented effective humanitarian action during conflicts in places like Africa and, of course, elsewhere. We also see how cyber-enabled dis and misinformation is increasingly used as a tool to scuttle peace and security in parts of the region. This is further being aggravated by the deployment of artificial intelligence in such circumstances. We, however, believe that the UN Security Council can make an immense difference to enhance peace and security in cyberspace, particularly from a regional perspective. Mr. President, indeed, the existing sources of inequalities adds a complex interaction to defining a mandate on peace and security in cyberspace for the UN Security Council. These disparities in cybersecurity infrastructure and digital capacities is a key challenge, coupled with persistent political conflicts in regions like Africa. There is also a seeming lack of awareness of the obligations related to non-intervention, due diligence, and peaceful settlement of disputes in the context of cyberspace. Therefore, as the UN Security Council determines its mandate for maintaining peace and security in cyberspace, it is important to consider collaborative measures which can effectively be leveraged to counter existing threats as well as build capacity. It is necessary to establish and enhance capacity at regional levels. However, we must note that this is not only a matter of legal, technical, and operational capacity, but also a matter of social, economic, and political realities. Strategic regional capacity building is required, given the varied cybersecurity maturity levels and local context. The specific realities of diverse regions must be considered, and this is because capacity gaps may not necessarily be the same across regions. Attempts to develop and transfer cyber capacity across regions must be approached purposefully, but also must be strategized on defined accountability mechanisms. In regions like Africa, priority areas where capacity building is needed in addressing cyber-related threats include governance, policy making, technical tools and infrastructure, as well as research. Capacity development for the protection of critical infrastructure is needed. It is important to ensure that cybersecurity incident response teams are established at regional levels where they are not yet in place, as well as mandating the establishment of regional 247 points of contact. It is also important to develop and implement mechanisms for regional and international collaboration amongst these teams. To promote trust and security in the cyber domain, there is indeed a need to focus on implementing the UN norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace across all regions. So many questions have been asked about the voluntary nature of the norms and the need to have more accountable approaches for maintaining peace and security in cyberspace. For example, having clear defined guidelines on use of force, armed attacks, and self-defense in cyberspace. Again, creating and supporting forums for developing confidence-building measures will decrease mistrust amongst member states and contribute to peaceful settlements of disputes when they occur in the cyber domain. It is also important for the UN Security Council to develop mechanisms for understanding the cyber threat landscape across regions. This will allow for making informed decisions on regulating security and stability. This may also imply setting up a working group on peace and security in cyberspace in the first instance to consider recommendations on conflicts and the promotion of peace and stability in cyberspace. Developing functional regional cybersecurity centers to enhance cross-border cooperation and information sharing will also aid in achieving these objectives. Capacity support for developing and implementing comprehensive regional cybersecurity strategies and national cybersecurity strategies should also be given attention, as well as advancing a culture of cybersecurity leadership. Mr. President, regional organizations have a key role to play in formulating policies and working with states in their region to deliver outcomes for peace and security. Therefore, existing cooperation between the UN and regional and sub-regional organizations in maintaining international peace and security should now include an agenda on cybersecurity. Finally, the UN Security Council should promote a platform that will allow effective dialogue aimed at encouraging each region to develop a framework for peace and security in cyberspace. I will conclude by adding that it will be important for the UN Security Council to pursue a multilateral agenda which decisively affirms the peace and security dimensions of the rule of law in cyberspace. This also necessitates establishing defined cyber governance principles and standards which will hold all regions and governments accountable for peace and stability. As we are becoming more interconnected and even more impacted by disruptive technologies such as artificial intelligence, we are also becoming more vulnerable. Therefore, it becomes crucial to reinforce our human and institutional capacity to secure cyberspace by building trust and confidence in the use of cyber technologies. I thank you very much, Mr. President.
I thank Madam Ifeanyi Ejiofor for her briefing. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. I'd like to begin by thanking once again Secretary General Guterres for his presence and briefing today. Let me also thank Mr. Stéphane Duguin of the Cyber Peace Institute and Professor Nina Ifeanyi Ejiofor of Leeds Beckett University for sharing their insights and expertise. My deep appreciation also goes out to all the representatives of the member states for participating in this high-level open debate. Today's meeting marks only the second time in the UN's history where the Security Council is formally meeting to discuss threats to international peace and security from cyberspace. The Council convened its first ever open debate on this topic 3 years ago in June 2021. To be sure, significant milestones have been achieved outside the Security Council. Bodies established by the General Assembly advanced norms on responsible state behavior in cyberspace. A number of ARIA formula meetings have also been held on cybersecurity, the most recent being the April meeting that the Republic of Korea co-hosted with the United States and Japan. The Secretary General has also demonstrated strong leadership, calling for measures to de-escalate cyber-related risk and establishing the high-level advisory body on artificial intelligence, of which Korea is a part. But developments since the first Security Council meeting 3 years ago sharply underscore why the Council, now more than ever, must proactively step up its engagement on threats emanating from cyberspace. The world has seen, in addition to myriad cross-border cyber attacks, the outbreak of major armed conflicts where attacks were carried out not just on the traditional battlefield, but also in cyberspace. The world has also seen how explosive advancements in artificial intelligence are dramatically empowering nefarious actors in the ability to cause further chaos and disruptions in cyberspace. The world has seen how malicious cyber activities can have real-world impacts by undermining confidence in the integrity of political elections, the security of crucial infrastructure, and the fabric of peace and security. As a matter of fact, a member state even had to declare a state of emergency after being subjected to ransomware attacks originating from another country. Cyber means are fundamentally dual use in nature. Anyone with malicious intent can introduce new threats or trigger, amplify, or accelerate existing threats. Alvin Toffler, a famous futurist, once noted, and I quote, "Our technological powers increase, but the side effects and potential hazards also escalate," unquote. The Republic of Korea is no stranger to the threats posed by malicious cyber activities and its impact on security. For the development of the weapons of mass destruction that imperil Korea are largely funded through such activities. The most recent report of the panel of experts of the 1718 committee cites how 40% of the DPRK's WMD programs are funded by illicit cyber means. The panel was investigating some 60 suspected cyber attacks by the DPRK on cryptocurrency companies between 2017 and 2023. Sadly, the panel is now defunct for reasons we all know. Through digital means, the DPRK systematically evades the very sanctions adopted by this Council and challenges the international non-proliferation regime that is integral to the Council's work. At a time when peace and security in the physical world and cyber world are increasingly intertwined, the Security Council must not bury its head in the sand. At the very least, it must keep pace with trends outside the Council and strengthen its engagement in response to the real and present threat from cyberspace. Just as the Security Council and the General Assembly work in synergy when it comes to discussions on small arms, terrorism, and non-proliferation, The Security Council and the General Assembly can likewise carve out complementary roles on cybersecurity. While there is as yet no authoritative approach to the path forward, the Republic of Korea would like to make the following 3 suggestions for the Security Council's consideration. First, the Council needs to have a clear diagnosis of the present situation. In order to do so, the Security Council can request a report on a regular basis to consider how cyber threats intersect with the Council's mandate and how evolving cyber threats impact international peace and security. Second, the prescription that follows must encompass the whole range of the Council's files. Cybersecurity could be mainstreamed into the Council's agenda in a manner similar to other cross-cutting issues such as women, peace and security, or WPS, youth and climate change. As many member states pointed out at the ARIA Formula meeting in April, there is a direct linkage between the malicious use of information and communications technology and the various issues under Security Council's remit, including sanctions, non-proliferation, and terrorism. In this vein, the Council can consider cybersecurity as a major component that cuts across its regional and thematic files or issues. Third, and in the mid to long term, the Security Council should be able to come up with an appropriate treatment for the challenge. The Council can convene meetings on malicious cyber activities that breach international law and harm peace and security. Furthermore, it could urge all relevant actors to use cyber technology in a responsible manner and pursue accountability through the tools at the Council's disposal. It goes without saying that the Security Council should develop a program of work on cybersecurity in a way that is complementary with the ongoing discussions in the General Assembly. The Security Council has a history of charting its own agenda in line with the emergence of new security challenges. Little did the architects of the UN Charter imagine that climate change, human rights abuses, as well as the pandemic would become the province of the Security Council. The Security Council must confront cybersecurity head-on if it is to remain relevant and agile in addressing one of the most pressing security challenges of our time. I sincerely hope today's open debate will generate momentum to make this happen. Before I conclude, let me just add one final point. The borderless nature of cyberspace exposes all nations to the harms of malicious cyber activities, whether digitally advanced or vulnerable. International security in cyberspace is only as strong as its weakest link. The humanitarian development peace nexus is therefore no less real in the cyber world. A cyberspace free from malicious cyber activities will facilitate digital development and unleash digital opportunities that ultimately contribute to the attainment of SDGs. An open, secure, accessible, and peaceful cyberspace in which cyber threats can be effectively deterred will also protect freedom and human rights online. Thank you very much. I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Linda Thomas Greenfield, Permanent Representative of the United States and member of President Biden's Cabinet.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start by thanking the Republic of Korea for bringing us together again to discuss this critical issue and critical matter of peace and security. I want to welcome you here to the Council and really express my strong appreciation. I had the honor of meeting you in Seoul during my visit a few months ago, and it's really wonderful to have you here. Thank you, Secretary General and briefers, for your briefings, and welcome to other ministers who have honored us with your presence today. Since we last gathered in April, we have continued to see the imperative of robust cyberspace security and therefore the need to discuss it in the Council. Cybersecurity enables our most basic systems to function, our economies and democratic institutions, and yes, even the United Nations itself. The United States is committed to working with all responsible actors to safeguard the benefits of cyberspace, build digital solidarity, and leverage technology to meet the SDGs. And yet, far too many state actors and non-state actors have taken an opposite tact. Across the world, they have exploited digital connectivity to extort victims for profit, steal money and ideas from governments and private entities. They target journalists and human rights defenders, pre-position for future conflict, and threaten our critical infrastructure, including here at the United Nations. As a council, we must work together to address cyber threats posed by non-state and state actors and strengthen norms of responsible state behavior, to hold countries accountable for irresponsible behavior in cyberspace and support victims impacted by that behavior, and to disrupt the networks of criminals behind dangerous cyber attacks around the globe. Already there exists a framework for doing so. The framework for responsible state behavior in cyberspace, adopted repeatedly and by consensus, makes clear that international law applies in cyberspace and that states are expected to uphold voluntary norms of state behavior during peacetime. Among those norms is the expectation that states investigate and mitigate malicious cyber activity emanating from their territory and aimed at the critical infrastructure of another. And yet, some who have endorsed that framework nevertheless choose to ignore or worsen, empower bad actors. As highlighted in April's cyber aria that includes malicious DPRK cyber operations, which are used to fund its weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs. And it includes Russia's cyber activity in Ukraine, Germany, Czechia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, and Sweden, where, among other activities, Russia's General Staff Main Intelligence Directorate has targeted political parties and democratic institutions. Not only that, the Russian government has served as a safe haven for ransomware actors who in recent years have caused billions of dollars of losses and significant damages to hospitals and other critical infrastructure. For our part, in February, the United States and the United Kingdom announced operations to disrupt the Lockbit ransomware group, which has targeted 2,000 victims and made ransom demands totaling hundreds of millions of dollars, over 120 million of which were paid out. In recent months, we unsealed an indictment charging Russian national Arthur Sangatov and Ivan Kondratiev, also known as Bastard, with deploying Lockbit against numerous victims across the United States and internationally. This comes in addition to efforts through the International Counter-Ransomware Initiative we set up in 2021, which is now the largest cyber partnership in the world. As individual states, through this partnership and in multilateral fora like the UN, we call on every state to do their part to implement the framework and promote peace and stability in cyberspace. And we call on this council to ensure cybersecurity is a cross-cutting priority and one considered in every aspect of our mandate, whether it's considering how peacekeeping operations can promote good cyber hygiene to limit risk, or better understanding how cybersecurity could enhance non-proliferation efforts. This council must continue to view challenges through the lens of cybersecurity. Colleagues, we have the ability to protect our most critical infrastructure and all those who count on it from harm. And we have the potential to safeguard the benefits of cyberspace for all. And so with the framework for responsible state behavior in cyberspace as a guide, let us reaffirm the applicability of international law to state-on-state behavior. Let us promote adherence to voluntary norms of responsible state behavior in peacetime and help reduce the risk of conflict stemming from cyber incidents. And let us uphold the rules-based international order and ensure that the digital world impacts the physical world for better. Mr. President, thank you again for bringing us together to discuss this important issue.
I thank Her Excellency Madame Thomas Greenfield for her statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Robert Purcell, Foreign Secretary and High Representative of Guyana for UN Security Council Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I thank you, Your Excellency, Cho Tae-yul, Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Presidency of the Republic of Korea, for organizing today's open debate on evolving threats in cyberspace. I also thank the Secretary General and our distinguished briefers for their insightful contributions to the discussion. Mr. President, rapid technological advancements have created a world of limitless possibilities with enormous economic, social, and geopolitical benefits. However, as they become more sophisticated, digital technologies pose unprecedented risk to both human and national security when deployed by malicious actors. The malicious use of digital technologies has also demonstrated the potential disruption of institutions and pose regulatory and policy challenges related to governance. Moreover, the transnational nature of cyber threats has rendered traditional notions of national security and defense obsolete. The cybersecurity threats to which we are now exposed can have a crippling impact on health, safety, and security of our citizens and the functioning of essential services. As the contemporary threats to cybersecurity become more sophisticated and multifaceted, ranging from state-sponsored cyber espionage, interference in democratic processes, human rights violations, attacks on critical infrastructure, and the spreading of misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech, so too must be our response. In this regard, I suggest 3 areas for consideration. Firstly, there must be accountability and oversight mechanisms to guard against cyber attacks. We note in this regard recent discussions around whether cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure such as medical facilities or power plants with grave consequences for life can amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, and/or the crime of aggression. This must be thoroughly examined and included in a global legal framework, and which must also ensure that the development and use of digital tools and technologies are done with due regard for ethical considerations and respect for human rights. In this regard, Guyana recognizes the importance of concluding the work of the ad hoc committee to elaborate an international convention on countering the use of ICTs for criminal purposes and the need for a widely ratified convention. Secondly, Mr. President, we must prioritize cooperation, collaboration, partnerships to build cybersecurity capacity and resilience and to investigate and prosecute cybercrimes across countries and regions. In terms of partnership, we must invest in building trust and enhancing regional and international collaboration to foster knowledge sharing, information exchange, and technology transfer. We must also seek to develop interoperability between our national, regional, and international systems that deal with the tracking and monitoring of cybersecurity threats. To be effective, a global framework must be developed which caters for intelligence sharing among states and relevant stakeholders on emerging threats to cybersecurity. While ongoing discussions within the UN and regional mechanisms have contributed positively to this endeavor, including within the framework of the Secretary General's Roadmap for Digital Cooperation and the SDG Digital Acceleration Agenda, there remains a lot of work to be done. We must also capitalize on the opportunities provided in the cyber domain to adopt a whole-of-society approach to counter cyber threats and bolster cybersecurity. New technologies such as artificial intelligence systems, which can help to identify and mitigate such threats. In this regard, as governments, we must redouble our efforts to collaborate with tech companies and the private sector to develop stronger security tools and policies and to enhance information sharing in the analysis of threat intelligence. Further, many developing countries such as Ghana lack the necessary resources and expertise to combat cyber threats and build resilience. Building technical capacity in these countries must be viewed as an investment in our collective security that would serve to remove existing inequalities and imbalances in cybersecurity capabilities. Considering this as a global community, we can explore the possibility of setting up a global fund which caters for training and capacity building, as well as software and hardware development. Furthermore, Guyana calls on developed countries with advanced technological capabilities to provide technical assistance and funding to enhance cybersecurity infrastructure and response capabilities in developing countries. We also urge that no effort be spared in ensuring that no single country or entity monopolizes the technological tools and capacities which can further exacerbate the vulnerabilities in developing countries, for instance, through the imposition of laws and regulations with extraterritorial impact. Thirdly, Mr. President, notwithstanding the ongoing processes within other UN fora, the Security Council must be a part of the cybersecurity dialogue, given the threat posed by malicious cyber activity in the international maintenance of peace and security. The Council must therefore intensify its discussion on this issue by building on the ARIA formula meetings and open debates, including current debate, to raise awareness on emerging threats posed by new technologies and explore collectively effective measures that can be deployed against the malicious use of such technologies. Mr. President, in closing, the challenges posed by cybersecurity threats are daunting but not insurmountable. Through our collective efforts and will and concerted action, we can build a resilient and secure digital world that fosters trust, innovation, and prosperity for all. Let us seize this moment, not merely to respond to the threat before us, but to proactively shape a future to ensure that no one is left behind. Guyana stands ready to work with all member states towards this endeavor. I thank you.
I thank His Excellency Secretary Purcell for his statement. I now give the floor to the permanent representative of the Russian Federation.
Господин председатель,
President,
уважаемый господин министр,
distinguished minister,
рады видеть вас в кресле
it's nice to see you in the
председателя
presidency seat at the Security Council.
Благодарим
We'd
генерального
like to thank the
секретаря
Secretary
за его
General
доклад.
for his briefing, and we listened very carefully to the briefers. The Russian Federation was one of the initiators of discussion of international information security at the UN. In 1998, 26 years ago, we raised this issue for the first time at the General Assembly, tabling the first draft resolution on this, which has since become an annual one, and enjoys the support of the vast majority of member states. On our initiative, and in order to discuss questions of security in the use of ICTs, the group of governmental experts was created, which was then grew into an inclusive format, the open-ended working group of the UN. It's the OEWG that is indeed the unique single negotiation platform under the aegis of the United Nations to discuss all questions related to international information security. Since it has been up and running, the OEWG has shown its effectiveness and worth. Amongst the notable results, in May 2024, on Russia's proposal, a register of contact points was launched to exchange information on computer attacks or incidents. There is a detailed consideration ongoing of existing and potential threats to international information security. Concrete steps are being taken towards building digital capacity of states. Last year, a universal principles were negotiated on the provision of assistance in this area. We are convinced that efforts in the international community should be focused on continuing to strengthen interstate cooperation within the framework of the OEWG in order to achieve concrete, practical outcomes on ensuring international information security. We believe it is crucially important to lock in and develop the results achieved by the OEWG, much like within the framework of the current group and also in the future negotiation format. Russia has already submitted its vision for a permanent, inclusive mechanism in this field. We think it is wise to preserve our common gains through creating, post-2025, a permanent OEWG with a decision-making function. These facts clearly show that the UN has long been undertaking consistent and staggered work on ICT security. Therefore, the need to involve the Security Council in it raises serious questions. This topic has its own specific aspects and should be discussed in specialized fora where there is the relevant expertise in place. It is crucial to keep discussions professional and constructive, avoiding politicization. The duplication of efforts of the international community and dragging this topic across various UN platforms is counterproductive and could cancel out all the gains achieved of decades of work of the GA. No less important is the fact that discussions at the OEWG are inclusive. All UN members can participate without exception on equal footing, as the group takes decisions by consensus. Moving this topic to the Security Council platform automatically excludes all states who are not on the Council from participating in decision-making. Those who today support the call of the Presidency to make ICT security part of the Security Council agenda should clearly bear this in mind. Finally, in any discussions on potential risks, you need to bear in mind the technological characteristics of cyberspace. Unlike the physical world, there the threats are extremely difficult to identify, let alone establish the source of an attack, the so-called attribution. Often, the fact that an attack has taken place only becomes clear much later, often through indirect indications. In this connection, there is still not even the most basic understanding of what cases of malicious use of ICTs could be, with certainty, be classed as a direct threat to international peace and security. Until the problem of attribution is resolved, and also until a single approach is reached on many complex aspects of this multifaceted specific problems, including legal ones, any discussion of the Security Council could become yet another exchange of baseless accusations and lead to deepening divisions in the international community. All of this undermines the authority of the Security Council and in no way helps us come up with constructive decisions. All states who have spoken and will speak today are participants of the OEWG, and proposals to the questions proposed for discussion are similar to those discussed in the group. In May, there was a ministerial-level roundtable held on capacity building in cybersecurity. And in July, there will be the 8th session of the OEWG taking place. Essentially, discussions on this topic are going smoothly, and its proceedings and outcomes are available to all. Therefore, we do not support the call for raising awareness of the international community on international information security through convening regular Security Council meetings. The mandate of the Council stipulates that it should effectively respond to real threats to international security and not engage in a philosophical exchange of views on popular topics in the public sphere. There are other platforms and formats for this. It's also extremely concerning attempts of Western colleagues to use accusations of malicious acts of ICTs as exerting pressure on inconvenient states, unless there's convincing proof of these cases. Instruments in here of this is often been used the group of experts of the Security Council 1718 on the DPRK, which, because one state has turned to the Russian side regarding computer attacks ascribed to Pyongyang, then we asked for provision of data on this that's necessary to investigate the alleged incidents. Experts which responded that they haven't received this from their sources. They haven't got any further information from their sources. Because without any specific proof, they can nevertheless continue their highly likely accusations in the West about this hack without the consent of the relevant countries. These kind of baseless insinuations are unacceptable, and attributions of responsibility require professional approaches to identify complete proof on these. They would categorically reject any attempt to discuss the fact that Russia is allegedly encouraging malicious acts online. For a quarter of a century, we've been advocating for preventing its militarization, and we've started to propose concrete steps in this area, long before countries of the West generally even recognized the existence of this risk. For our country, a priority is creating a universal, legally binding instrument on cybersecurity, which will enable the prevention of interstate conflicts in this sphere. To this end, in 2023, Russia presented to the General Assembly a prototype of a specialized international treaty, a concept for a UN Convention on ensuring international information security. The adoption of this universal agreement would allow not only to legally set out the rights and obligations of countries pertaining to their ICT activities, but it would also regulate the question of political attribution of computer attacks in international relations. It will also help ensure full compliance online with the principle of sovereign equality of states, who currently are blatantly ignoring being ignored by many technologically developed countries. We invite all member states to engage in substantive discussion on the basis of our proposal at the General Assembly. Unfortunately, Western countries, primarily the USA, rejected this idea, trying to preserve as much of a free rein for themselves as possible. This particularly stark against the backdrop of the recognition of high-ranking US officials of the facts of carrying out that there was ICT attacks carried out against Russia using ICTs, and also reflecting in the doctrines of Washington and NATO offensive, i.e. aggressive approaches. In today's graphics, they spoke about cyber attacks. Only they forget to refer that, again, there was an unprecedented disinformation war against Russia. This has been coordinated all from Britain and organizations based in London. This is Public Relations and Communications Association and PR network. Also, they continue to talk about dissemination of this army of Ukraine. With the use of these IT resources, there's tons of disinformation and lies about Russia and the Russian special military operation. There is also concern or attempts to water down global discussions on countering the use of ICTs for criminal purposes. A clear example of this is the initiative to counter ransomware. These kind of select clubs who don't really hide their politicized aims undermines the efforts of UN member states to develop universal mechanisms to fight the use of ICTs for criminal purposes, inter alia through the specialized UN Special Committee. President of the Russian Federation has for more than 26 years now been promoting a constructive agenda in the field of international information security, making its own contribution to maintaining peace and stability both in the real world and online. We will continue to advocate for the creation of a peaceful, global and safe ICT environment. Thank you.
I thank the permanent representative of the Russian Federation for his statement. I wish to remind all speakers to limit their statements to no more than 3 minutes in order to enable the Council to carry out its work expeditiously. Flashing lights on the colors of the microphones will prompt speakers to bring their remarks to a close after 3 minutes. I now give the floor to the representative of Mozambique.
Mr. President, Mozambique wishes to convey our gratitude to you, Mr. President, and through you to the Republic of Korea for the most pertinent choice of this important theme as the signature event of your presidency of the Security Council for the month of June. We are deeply grateful to the Secretary General for his extremely insightful approach to the topic, so well and aptly aligned with the United Nations Charter. We have followed with great attention the important perspectives provided by Mr. Stéphane Dugan, President of Cyber Peace Institute, and Professor Nena Ifeanyi Ejiofor, Professor of Law and Technology. We extend our greetings to their excellencies, the ministers and the high dignitaries present in this chamber today. Mr. President, all the statements made so far bear testimony to the fact that the boundaries between cyberspace and the physical world continue to blur rapidly. As a consequence, virtually all aspects of our modern life have migrated to and are relying on digital technology. Thus, the imperative of the Council's involvement is supported by the fact that many countries, big and small, seriously consider cyberspace that has no borders as a domain of possible conflict alongside land, sea, air, and space dimensions. As a matter of fact, we may consider that a starting point was established in 2013 when the United Nations General Assembly agreed that international law, including the United Nations Charter, does apply to cyberspace. Nonetheless, the global diplomatic conversation about the rules of engagement in cyberspace has thus far made a slower progress. In that connection, discussions under the auspices of the open-ended working group on information and communications technologies have yet to yield results. Mr. President, the landscape and scope of cyber threats are rapidly evolving. With the fast progress of artificial intelligence, with significant threats posing new challenges to national and international peace, security, and stability. With cyber threats on the rise, hardly a day goes by without a report of a ransomware attack against public or private entities, proliferation of artificial intelligence generated deepfake that look very real, or a denial of service attempt against parts of a country or essential services such as finance, healthcare, electricity grids, e-government, and other critical infrastructures. As the tools developed to enable modern life are misused and weaponized, cybercrime has emerged as one of the most significant threat multipliers, undermining public trust in institutions and amplifying political and social tensions. To compound these challenges, intensifying geopolitical competition has become a driving force in cybersecurity. Adversaries are striving to acquire military and intelligence cyber capabilities triggering a cyber arms race amid increasing accusations, attributions, retaliation, and escalation. As cybersecurity becomes more entangled with geopolitics, the prospect for progress toward an international agreement on better cybersecurity norms continues to stall or even to recede. This immobilism or lack of progress on such an important matter to humankind risks undermining our collective security. Mr. President, given the fast evolving threat landscape and the absence of agreed rules of engagement, the Security Council should agree to undertake, as a matter of urgency, several specific rules and actions that include the following. A, the setting of international norms and frameworks for a responsible state and private entities' behavior in cyberspace based on a global cooperation. B, within the spirit of fostering our collective security, the Council could support capacity building initiatives to enhance the cyber defense capabilities of member states, particularly those with limited resources. C, the Council could promote situational awareness briefings and facilitate the sharing of threat intelligence and best practices among nations to improve our common cybersecurity resilience. D, cyber threats should be intrinsically linked to other agenda items of the Security Council, such as counterterrorism, election interference, protection of critical infrastructure, and the safeguarding of peace operations and humanitarian action. Mr. President, we believe it is crucial to update and broaden the debate on cybersecurity. Issues related to the theft of ideas, data, intellectual property, human rights and privacy, as well as design parameters for critical consumer products and public utilities deserve equal attention. For countries like Mozambique, it is essential that the voices and perspectives of the Global South be heard in the global discussion on cybersecurity. Having a diversity of perspectives at the table and avoiding one-size-fits-all approaches is crucial for making global progress towards a fairer and more resilient governance framework. By encouraging discussions like the one we are having under the presidency of the Republic of Korea, the Council can play a pivotal role in safeguarding international peace and security in the digital age. Mozambique pledges to remain engaged on this issue. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Mozambique for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Mr. President, I thank you for convening this important open debate. I also thank His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, for his insightful brief. We further thank CEO Stefan Dogan and Professor Nena Ifeanyi Ajofo for their further insight. We welcome the participation of the Honorable Ministers in this meeting. Sierra Leone appreciates the opportunity to speak on this critical issue of addressing evolving threats in cyberspace while recognizing the immense benefits and interconnected challenges that information and communication technology presents to international peace and security. We also recognize the fundamental development challenge of addressing the global digital divide and the risk of the deepening of the divide with the proliferation of artificial intelligence, particularly generative AI. In this statement, Sierra Leone will speak specifically to the guiding questions. The key emerging and evolving trends of malicious activities in cyberspace that pose challenges to international peace and security include proliferation of malware, decoy ransomware, ransomware as a service models, and cryptocurrency heists. These activities pose a serious risk to civilian populations, having devastating effects on national security and the overall stability of our countries, posing significant risk to international peace. We are deeply concerned about the evolving tactics being employed in cyberspace, which not only fuel terrorist activities, but also jeopardize the integrity of financial systems and critical services. We stress that the increasing use of ransomware as a service models and cryptocurrency theft to support nefarious activities highlight the pressing need for enhanced cooperation and capacity building to combat this threat effectively. The recent escalation in the frequency and scope of ransomware attacks targeting critical infrastructure and essential public services demonstrates the severe impact of cyber threats on public safety and political stability and requires continuous vigilance. Sierra Leone is deeply concerned about the implications of cyber threats, including the use of cybercrime to fund illicit activities and evade international sanctions. All of this underscore the urgent need for enhanced international cooperation and capacity building efforts to combat these threats effectively. We call for increased collaboration among member states to bolster the Security Council's capacity to respond effectively to malicious activities in cyberspace, particularly those threatening critical infrastructure, humanitarian operations, and the protection of civilians. A holistic approach is essential in maintaining peace and security in the digital era. Mr. President, it is our considered view that the malicious use of ICT acts as a threat multiplier when they exacerbate existing conflicts and challenges. The increasing prevalence of malicious cyber activities targeting critical infrastructure, including hospitals and other healthcare systems, financial services, the energy sector, satellite, transportation, and other emergency systems, underscore the urgent need for concerted global action to safeguard our digital networks and systems, and the importance of the Security Council's engagement in addressing these issues and managing and resolving conflict that involve cyber elements. As we have heard already, artificial intelligence, despite its huge benefits, can be weaponized to enhance the scale, speed, and sophistication of cyber attacks. Autonomous systems can conduct continuous and adaptive attacks, learning from their environment to exploit vulnerabilities more efficiently. The AI-driven attacks can target critical infrastructure, financial systems, and even individual privacy, resulting in widespread disruption and damage. We have also recognized the leveraging AI for cyber defense can help us stay ahead of emerging threats. AI can enhance threat detection, response time, and incident management. By investing in AI-driven defensive technologies, we can build more resilient cyber infrastructures. By investing in capacity building and technology transfer, we can level up capacities of developing states. Mr. President, Sierra Leone is of the view that the Security Council can play a pivotal role in addressing evolving nature of cyber threats and promoting international peace and security through comprehensive engagement with relevant UN General Assembly committees and specialized agencies and bodies. Over the past decade, the Security Council has become increasingly seized of the international peace and security implications of cyberspace. Since 2016, the Council members have convened several area-formula meetings, during which states address cybersecurity with various linkages to topics such as protection of critical infrastructure, protection of civilians, disinformation and hate speech in cyberspace. Sierra Leone therefore commends Estonia for convening the first high-level open debate on the topic during its presidency in June 2021. In light of the Security Council's growing focus on cybersecurity, we support the proposal to convene regular briefings to assess the evolving cyber threat landscape, incorporating insights from diverse stakeholders to ensure a comprehensive understanding of emerging challenges and stay ahead of them. We emphasize the necessity of effective coordination, cooperation, and engagement by the Council to combat cyber threats comprehensively. We underscore that the engagement by the Security Council can take place in a manner that is complementary to other ongoing UN processes on ICTs, including relevant discussions on norms of responsible state behavior in the use of ICTs, and the UN Framework for Responsible State Behavior in the Use of ICTs, which was adopted by consensus under the auspices of the General Assembly. Developing assessment and strategies on the evolving cyber threat landscape by incorporating comprehensive insight from the UN system, private sector, civil society, and academia will ensure that the Security Council remains abreast of new developments and their implications on international peace and security. Recognizing the linkages between cyber threats and other agenda items of the Security Council, member states should employ ways to effectively mainstream cyber and ICT-related concerns into the Council's existing body of work. Sierra Leone suggests mainstreaming cyber-related concerns into the Council's discussion on various thematic files, including peacekeeping missions, Council-mandated sanctions, and non-proliferation and counterterrorism efforts. Strengthening national cybersecurity capabilities and promoting international cooperation are vital components of this approach and could also be integrated into each of these lines of effort. By integrating cyber consideration into its work, the Council can better address the complex challenges posed by cyber threats in a comprehensive and holistic manner. Therefore, and on our part, Mr. President, the creation of the National Computer Security Incidents Response Coordination Center in Sierra Leone has led to the centralization of the mandate to address all cybersecurity issues, including responding to cybersecurity incidents in Sierra Leone. Since its establishment, the center has achieved significant milestones in bolstering the nation's cybersecurity resilience through a multifaceted approach to capacity building and cooperation and collaboration. Significant activities include capacity building initiatives focused on cybersecurity and crime. The center has played a pivotal role in raising awareness and providing training programs for various stakeholders, collaborating with regional and development partners to conduct specialized trainings for judiciary, law enforcement agencies on cybercrime and electronic evidence, knowledge transfer, and sharing of best practice in cybersecurity and cybercrime investigations. Such collaborations enhance the collective capability to combat global cyber threats effectively through the strengthening of national capacities. Let me conclude, Mr. President, by firstly and regrettably noting the ever-daring cyber threats directed at our multilateral, international, and judicial institutions. And accordingly, Sierra Leone unequivocally condemns attack directed at the International Criminal Court. One such attack, which the court described as targeted and sophisticated attack, with the object of espionage, and can therefore be interpreted as a serious attempt to undermine the court's mandate. As a state party, Sierra Leone reiterates its commitment to uphold and defend the principles and values enshrined in the Rome Statute, and to preserve its integrity from any interference and pressure against the court, its officials, and those cooperating with it. Secondly, let me reaffirm Sierra Leone's commitment to promoting cybersecurity as a fundamental aspect of international peace and security, working collaboratively within the Security Council and the broader international community to address the complex and evolving threats in the cyberspace posed by malicious activities. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for organizing this important open debate on the growing risks of cyber threat to global security. I also thank the Secretary General and the briefers for their presentation on the worrying increase of harmful cyber activities. Ransomware attacks on critical infrastructure and the theft of digital assets and data put public safety on political risk, on political stability at risk. The involvement of both governmental actors and non-governmental actors makes the situation even more complex, even more dangerous. The spread of disinformation on online platforms fuel division, hatred, intolerance, and ultimately terrorism, with false information interfering in state affairs, hampering cooperation, and ultimately threatening peace and security in the world. New technologies, including artificial intelligence, are making cyber threat even worse and harder to deal with. So we need to address these challenges globally and urgently. Considering these realities, I want to emphasize the following key points. First, the principle of the UN Charter should apply equally to cyberspace. Information and communication technology must be used according to these principles. Second, we are striving to an open and secure cyberspace, which is essential for achieving the global development goals of Agenda 2030. For this reason, we need a legally binding framework created within the UN. Third, we must help developing countries build protection against cyber threats and close the digital gap. Building their abilities is essential for securing cyberspace for all nations and should be a top priority. Fourth, the international community must work together to fight the spread of false information online. Government are involved parties must cooperate following international law. International cooperation is key in our endeavor to effectively fight ever-changing cyber threats. Fifth, we need to strengthen the legal framework to prevent and punish cybercrime. Here, I would like to highlight that my country plays an active role in international efforts to fight the harmful use of technology for criminal activities. This is especially clear in Algeria. Leadership of the UN ad hoc committee to elaborate a comprehensive international convention on countering the use of information and communications technology for criminal purposes. We hope that this committee will achieve successful outcomes in the next session this summer. Mr. President, in conclusion, Algeria strongly supports the UN role in dealing with issues related to the use of information and communication technologies that affect international peace and security. The open-ended working group on cybersecurity and the General Assembly are essential platforms for inclusive discussion on cyber threats. They ensure that all members can participate in shaping the global response to cybersecurity challenges, and we reiterate our commitment to supporting their valuable work. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria, and I now give the floor to the representative of Slovenia.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. President. I extend my thanks to the Republic of Korea for organizing today's debate. I would also like to thank Secretary General for his briefing, and I'd like to thank our briefers today for their insights and recommendations. Mr. President, allow me to address 2 points pertinent to the topic of today's debate. First, on evolving threats in cyberspace. It is our view that having an accurate understanding of the ever-evolving cyber threat landscape, particularly in the context of a rapid growth of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, is paramount for discussing the cooperative measures the international community can take in response to malicious cyber activities. In this regard, we commend the ongoing work of the dedicated open-ended working group established by the General Assembly, but also recognize the complementary potential for enhanced consideration by the Council, for instance, by addressing the findings of the Secretary General's report on cyber threats. Malicious cyber activities, such as ransomware attacks and those targeting civilian critical infrastructure, particularly when transboundary in nature, can pose new challenges and exacerbate existing threats to international peace and security. This brings me to my second point, addressing the evolving threats in cyberspace. The Council bears the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. To fulfill its responsibility in accordance with its mandate, the Council should therefore play a decisive role in de-escalating tensions and promoting accountability when malicious cyber activities threaten international peace and security. In our view, activities that support terrorism or the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction or exacerbate existing conflicts or target critical civilian infrastructure pose such a threat, thereby necessitating the Council's response. In the same vein, the Council should address malicious cyber activities, such as disinformation campaigns that incite violence against civilian population, cause humanitarian suffering, or disrupt the work of the humanitarian organizations, peacekeeping and peacebuilding operations. Mr. President, in an era marked by the growing digitalization of conflicts, it is crucial to emphasize the applicability of international law, including international humanitarian law and international human rights law, which must be respected. So allow me to conclude by assuring you of our commitment to collaborate with Council members and the broader UN membership in continuing discussions on cyber threats to international peace and security. We also remain steadfast in our commitment to implement measures aimed at mitigating these risks, including by implementing the existing norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Slovenia for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Malta.
Thank you, President. I begin by thanking the Republic of Korea for organizing this open debate on this highly topical and important issue. I also thank the Secretary General and the briefers for their insightful briefings. Malicious cyber activities present multifaceted challenges that can have serious impacts on the maintenance of international peace and security. These range from ransomware attacks on government institutions, critical infrastructure, and essential public services to the unauthorized access and use of electronically stored data. We are alarmed by the malicious cyber activities targeting government institutions and democratic processes, often with a direct intent to undermine stability and security and to erode trust in the outcome of democratic elections. The growing reliance on digital technologies by women's human rights defenders and other activists increase their risk of exposure to online harassment and attacks. Furthermore, human rights and fundamental freedoms, including freedom of expression and assembly, are being increasingly restricted by strict surveillance, internet shutdowns, and bandwidth throttling. At the same time, digital platforms are often exploited to spread dis- and misinformation and hate speech, including misogynistic, homophobic, and radicalizing content. Our collective efforts to promote stability in this domain must be rooted in human rights, both online and offline. Cyber policies must be conflict-sensitive, age-sensitive, and gender-responsive to detect and prevent the harmful impacts of digital security threats, such as technology-facilitated gender-based violence. Women's full, equal, safe, and meaningful leadership and participation in cyber decision-making is crucial, especially in conflict and post-conflict contexts. We reaffirm that international law, in particular the UN Charter, is applicable to activities in cyberspace, as recognized by the UN General Assembly. In the same vein, the framework of responsible state behavior in cyberspace provides agreed guidelines for member states. The framework should be upheld by all member states, and we support the establishment of a program of action to ensure continued and institutionalized dialogue. In addition, we call upon all states to exercise diligence, take appropriate measures in line with the norms of the UN Framework for Responsible State Behavior in Cyberspace, and refrain from participating in or aiding malicious cyber activities originating from their territories. State-sponsored malicious cyber actors exploit ransomware and digital thefts to generate illicit revenues. These include attacks against critical infrastructures, as well as financial institutions and cryptocurrency firms. Cyber attacks and crimes know no borders, and no country is immune to them. Reports estimate that in 2023 alone, malicious cyber activities by DPRK-sponsored hackers have generated the equivalent of $1 billion. The regime utilizes these revenues to fund its illegal WMD program, which threatens peace and security in the peninsula and beyond. These activities have been well documented in the reports of the 1718 Committee Panel of Experts, which played an important and invaluable role in investigating these crimes. To conclude, President, the Security Council can play an important role in addressing the issue of cybersecurity. Its efforts can and must be complementary to other cybersecurity fora based in the General Assembly, including its open-ended working group. The Council can serve as a powerful platform to reinforce agreed principles and enhance further discussions. It should promote an open, secure, accessible, and peaceful cyberspace. We will continue to support its renewed engagement on this topic. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Malta, and I now give the floor to the representative of Japan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I extend my sincere gratitude to Your Excellency for your leadership in convening this significant and timely open debate, and to Secretary General and the distinguished briefers for their invaluable insights. At the outset, Japan would like to express its commitment to promote a free, fair, and secure cyberspace. In recent years, we have witnessed a concerning trend of a qualitative and quantitative increase in cyber operations used for malicious purposes, including ransomware attacks, disruption of critical infrastructure, interference with democratic elections, and theft of sensitive data. The alarming rise in cryptocurrency theft also poses a clear and present threat to international peace and security, potentially financing illicit weapons programs. In particular, it is well known that North Korea is financing its WMD and ballistic missile programs through malicious cyber operations, and it is our urgent need for the international community to tackle such threats, as the 1718 Committee panel of experts reported. Furthermore, the proliferation of commercial cyber intrusion tools, such as spyware, raises profound concerns about their impact on national security, human rights, and international peace and security. The stakes have never been higher. To address these alarming challenges and ensure a free, fair, and secure cyberspace, we should uphold the rule of law in cyberspace by advancing concrete discussions on application of existing international law and implementing agreed norms, rules, and principles of responsible state behavior. We should also place great importance on sharing information of existing potential threats, sharing best practices, and promoting capacity building efforts. Through dialogues at all levels, we should aim to foster trust, reduce threats, and most importantly, reduce miscalculations. Under the UN framework, Japan will continue its constructive engagement in the current open-end working group. Japan also believes the program of action as an action-oriented framework should serve as a future permanent platform to support the implementation of the agreed norms, rules, and principles for responsible state behavior. At the same time, Japan fully agrees the Security Council, which bears primary responsibility for the maintenance, peace, and security, needs to have a greater and complementary role in the field of cyber security. The Council must closely monitor serious cyber incidents with grave consequences for international peace and security, including those targeting critical infrastructure. The Council's regular briefings would be very useful to keep track of the evolving threat landscape in ICT security. Additionally, the Council needs to address the growing cyber threats to the global arms control and non-proliferation regime, including proliferation risks potentially posed by non-state actors. In conclusion, Japan reaffirms its unwavering commitment to safeguarding a free, fair, and secure cyberspace. The Security Council must remain on high alert regarding emerging security risks associated with the ICTs. We look forward to further discussions on the Council's next steps to effectively address these important topics based on today's opportunity being held by Your Excellency's initiative. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Japan for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Foreign Minister Cho, for convening this debate and for bringing to the Council some clear ideas on how we can move our work forward in this area. I also thank the Secretary-General and our briefers today for setting out how cyber threats can impact international peace and security. I'll touch on three trends of importance to the UK. First, as we've heard, ransomware can disrupt government functions and the provision of vital public services. This creates conditions for instability when occurring at scale or for sustained periods, which, as this Council knows, can impact peace and security. Any state can be a victim of ransomware. This is why an international response is needed to constrict the ecosystem facilitating it, and to enable all states to increase their resilience and their response capability. The UK is playing a leading role alongside Singapore as co-chairs of the policy pillar of the Counter-Ransomware Initiative. We urge others to join the initiative. Second, as the use of AI systems in our societies grows, we need to understand how cyber threats will change whilst identifying opportunities for AI to support our cybersecurity goals. Malicious and irresponsible actors can exploit vulnerabilities in AI systems to induce specific behavior or manipulate its decision-making. Maintenance of international peace will require AI systems to be secure by design. That is why the UK held the first ever Council debate on AI in our presidency last year, and it's why we published guidelines for secure AI system development alongside the United States and a cross-regional group of 18 states. Third, malicious and irresponsible actors are also able to take advantage of the growing market in advanced cyber intrusion capabilities, leading to a more unpredictable threat landscape for us all. The UK and France invite international partners to join us in the multi-stakeholder Pall-Mall process as we consider approaches towards this shared concern. In that context, we must continue to raise awareness of cyber threats. We are, for example, very concerned by DPRK's use of malicious cyber activities to obtain cryptocurrencies to fund their illegal weapons program. This is why we need to redouble our efforts to ensure effective implementation of the DPRK sanctions regime. And finally, cyber advances also increase the risks of disinformation. This is clearly a major challenge for our work. For Russia to accuse the UK of running a disinformation war is astonishing, when their own disinformation machine has been so obviously and clearly exposed, including here at the UN. We were not the delegation who brought to the chamber and to the internet the conspiracy of weaponized bats and ducks. President, cyber threats will present an ever greater number of risks to international peace and security, and governments need to evolve to address them effectively. As part of this, the UK remains committed to upholding the UN framework for responsible state behaviour and to working with others through capacity building and enabling public-private partnerships. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom, and I now give the floor to the representative of Switzerland.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, I would like to thank the Republic of Korea for organizing this important debate on the challenges of cybersecurity. I would also like to thank the Secretary-General, Professor Enena Ifeanyi Jufo, and Mr. Stéphane Duguin, CEO of the Cyber Peace Institute in Geneva, for their contributions. Switzerland is witnessing two decisive developments in cyberspace that are of concern to us. On the one hand, the increasing digitization of conflicts and the use of cyber operations in armed conflicts are transforming the nature of these conflicts. On the other hand, the growing intensity of attacks by ransomware and state-sponsored cyber attacks against critical infrastructure is a major concern for Switzerland. The use of ransomware to extort currency and cryptocurrencies, or the targeting of critical infrastructure, threatens to paralyze key structures in our societies. These activities also affect the international community's ability to achieve these sustainable development goals due to the heightened vulnerability of developing countries. They can pose a threat to international peace and security and therefore fall within the mandate of this Council. The concept note proposed by the Republic of Korea asks what role the Council can play in addressing threats arising from malicious activities in cyberspace. Let me outline some options in this regard. First, the Council should regularly take note of current cybersecurity developments and threats. Given the multi-dimensional implications and the geographical scope of the issue, it would be appropriate for the Council to hold a regular briefing. The briefing could include presentations by representatives of UN entities, the private sector, civil society, and academia, as well as other relevant entities. This awareness raising would enable the Council to make fully informed decisions, particularly on specific geographical issues and in the context of peacekeeping operations. Secondly, the Council should reaffirm certain established principles. We attach particular importance to the applicability of international law in cyberspace, and especially international humanitarian law, to activities in cyberspace in the context of armed conflict. The Council should also emphasize the importance of state responsibility and due diligence, and recognize the 11 norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace. These elements, complemented by confidence-building and capacity-building measures, constitute the framework for responsible state behavior in the use of ICTs that has been adopted by consensus by all UN member states. We would support a Council product that affirms this framework and thus contributes to rebuilding trust. Finally, the Council's activities must be complementary to those of other bodies. It is not for the Council to develop rules of behavior or agreements. This is the prerogative of the General Assembly and the expert processes that it has mandated. The Council should focus its attention on developing its understanding of risks and their mitigation, including in specific cases. Mr. President, the responsible use of cyberspace offers enormous opportunities to meet tomorrow's challenges, despite the recognized risks. In his new Agenda for Peace, the Secretary-General encourages us to find new ways to protect ourselves from these new threats. While the negotiations on the Pact for the Future provide us with an opportunity to develop a common understanding in this regard, the Council also has a key role to play. Today's debate confirms this. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Switzerland for her statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of China.
President, I thank you for presiding over today's meeting. I thank Secretary General Guterres for the briefing, and thank the two experts for the presentations. At present, we find ourselves in an unprecedented digital age, where the revolution of information technology is making rapid progress. Digital and cyber economies are flourishing, and the international community is seeing accelerated integration into a community with a shared future featuring intertwined interests and shared weal and woe. At the same time, risks and challenges in cyberspace are ever more serious. Cyber attacks, cyber espionage, cyber crimes, and disinformation continue unabated. Cyber terrorism has become a global public menace. Cyberspace is increasingly militarized, camp-based, and ideology-driven, and the digital divide among countries and regions continues to widen. President, in cyberspace, while all countries enjoy common opportunities and have common interests, they also face common challenges and bear common responsibilities. The international community should deepen exchanges, enhance mutual trust, work together, and jointly promote the governance of and the international rule-making on cyberspace. China wishes to propose the following. First, we need to build a more peaceful and secure cyberspace. Cyberspace is deeply integrated with the physical world and is an important anchor for the development of human society. It must never become a new battlefield. A certain country designates cyberspace as a domain of military operations, develops offensive cyber military capabilities, builds cyber military alliances, and pushes for making rules of engagement in cyberspace. This will only undermine the mutual trust among countries, escalate risks of friction and conflict in cyberspace, and threaten international peace and security. All parties should abandon the zero-sum game and Cold War mentality, foster a vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security, firmly uphold the peaceful nature of cyberspace, effectively prevent the militarization of and an arms race in cyberspace, address threats to cybersecurity through dialogue and cooperation, and stay committed to realizing one's own security through common security. Second, we need to build a more universally beneficial and prosperous cyberspace. Digital and cyber economies have already become major engines for global economic growth. All countries should adopt more active, open, coordinated, and inclusive policies, promote the application and popularization of ICTs, and ensure the openness, stability, and security of the ICT industrial chain, so that more countries and people can enjoy the dividends of the Internet. Developed countries should help developing countries enhance digital, Internet-driven, and smart development, enhance the latter's capacity for risk prevention and emergency response, and ensure equitable access to key resources such as cyber infrastructure, technologies, and computing power to minimize the digital divide and implement the 2030 SDGs. The practice of forming cliques along ideological lines, overstretching the concept of national security, erecting a digital iron curtain, seeking technological dominance and advantages, and even blatantly interfering with and suppressing the economic and technological development of other countries will only hinder the international community's efforts to promote governance of cyberspace. Third, we need to build a more equitable and orderly cyberspace. Developing international rules on cyberspace acceptable to all is key to upholding lasting peace and stability in cyberspace. All parties should earnestly abide by the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, in particular principles such as sovereign equality, non-interference in internal affairs, non-use or threat of force, and peaceful settlement of disputes, and comply with and implement the UN framework of responsible state behavior in cyberspace. At the same time, all parties should always uphold the role of the UN as the main channel, and on the basis of equal and extensive participation, translate long-standing international consensus into legally binding norms of behavior in cyberspace. The constructive solutions proposed by China, such as the Global AI Governance Initiative and the Global Initiative on Data Security, can serve as blueprints for future rulemaking on cyberspace. Fourth, we need to build a more equal and inclusive cyberspace. Diversity is the fundamental feature of the world and a source of human progress. The Internet connects all countries, peoples, and civilizations in ways never seen before, and naturally should become an important platform for all of humanity to showcase diverse cultures and promote the development and inheritance of civilizations. We need to fully leverage ICTs, step up online exchanges and dialogue, encourage mutual understanding and amity among the people of all countries, promote tolerance and coexistence among different civilizations, and better promote the shared values of humanity. We must be vigilant against the practice of a small number of countries of imposing their own values as universal values, and even interfering in the internal affairs of other countries and disrupting their development and stability. We must resolutely oppose the use of cyberspace for spreading extremism, terrorism, disinformation, and hate speech. President, China is a witness to and a beneficiary of the development of the Internet. Today, it is home to nearly 1.1 billion Internet users. We have built the world's largest and technologically leading cyber infrastructure and have put in place a sound policy system for cyberspace governance. In recent years, China has been actively deepening policy communication and experience sharing with the Global South, promoting practical cooperation in capacity building in areas such as infrastructure, technology, law enforcement, and emergency response, getting deeply engaged in cybersecurity processes under frameworks including the UN OEWG on ICT security, the G20, APEC, BRICS, the SCO, and the ASEAN Regional Forum, among others, and making important contributions to promoting global cyberspace governance. The information revolution as a trend of the times is surging forward. Cyberspace carries the infinite hope of humanity for a bright future. China stands ready to work with the international community to build a more peaceful, secure, open, cooperative, and orderly cyberspace, and join hands to build a community with a shared future in cyberspace. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for his statement. And I now give the floor to the representative of Ecuador.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome the presence of Mr. Jo Tae-yul, Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. I'd also like to thank the Secretary-General for the information provided, as well as the briefers, Mr. Stefan Duguin and Madame Enena Ifeyani Ajufo for their briefings. In an ever more interconnected and interdependent world, cybersecurity is a global challenge which requires a coordinated and cooperative response on the part of the entire international community. The malicious use of information technologies acts as a multiplier effect for threats to peace and security, including in the following areas. Firstly, it can affect critical infrastructures such as health systems, financial services, and energy networks, which are essential for societies to be able to function. Secondly, it can spread disinformation and hate messages, polarizing even further societies and stoking conflicts. Thirdly, it can support terrorist activities and fund illicit activities of state and non-state actors. In the light of these challenges, the Security Council cannot afford to drag its heels in the light of the development of these threats in cyberspace, because they are interconnected with various items on the agenda of this organ, including non-proliferation and counter-terrorism. In this regard, the Security Council must assess the possibility of including in its products elements related to cybersecurity, depending on the needs that exist on a case-by-case basis. For example, strengthening of strategic communications in peacekeeping operations and special political missions. The promotion of a secure, open, and peaceful cyberspace requires norms of responsible behavior in the use of ICTs. Additionally, the development of international law in this area must be accompanied accompanied by capacity building, in particular in countries in conflict situations, because they are the most susceptible to suffer from the malicious use of ICTs. The open-ended working group on security of and in the use of information and communication technologies has made significant progress in this area. The outcome of their work could serve as a guide for the work of this Council. I conclude by recalling the need to preserve and promote a responsible use of cyberspace in order to guarantee its stability and security, and in this way reduce the significant risk that countries are facing. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Ecuador, and I'll give the floor to the permanent representative of France.
Monsieur le Président,
Je remercie le secrétaire général,
M. Duguin et Mme Ifeanyi Afudjo pour leurs interventions et je vous remercie d'avoir organisé ce débat. L'essor des technologies de l'information et de la communication contribue au progrès et à la réalisation des objectifs de développement durable. Il pose néanmoins des défis majeurs pour notre sécurité collective. Dans des sociétés fortement dépendantes de ces technologies, les activités cyber malveillantes n'ont cessé de croître en fréquence, en gravité et en sophistication. Elles peuvent exploiter des vulnérabilités nombreuses et utiliser des vecteurs de plus en plus divers, accessibles désormais à de multiples acteurs. Les outils et services d'intrusion se diffusent de façon incontrôlée sur les marchés et leur usage irresponsable contribue à l'accroissement des menaces cyber. Les cyberattaques peuvent constituer en elles-mêmes des menaces pour la paix et la sécurité internationale par leur impact sur les infrastructures critiques et les risques d'escalade qu'elles induisent. Les attaques par rançon logiciel, dont les autorités françaises ont constaté une hausse de 30%
noted an increase of 30% of these in 2023, can also then affect essential sectors such as energy. It can destabilize economies and they can disrupt the functioning of government institutions. Cyber attacks are now being carried out in the context of armed conflicts, as we've seen in the attacks carried out by Russia against the satellite network Viasat in the first hours of their illegal invasion of Ukraine. Malicious cyber activities can also fuel other threats to international peace and security, including that of proliferation. The most recent report of the 1718 Committee indicates that illegal weapons of mass destruction programs of the North Korean regime were allegedly financed to a tune of 40% by illicit cyber means, for example, ransomware or theft of cryptocurrency. The UN and the Security Council, within its mandate, does nevertheless have means of providing a concerted response to these threats. Let's recall, first of all, that the cyberspace is not a Wild West or a normative void. International law is fully applicable, including the UN Charter, international humanitarian law and international human rights law. Norms for responsible state behavior have been defined by consensus in order to promote cooperation, to foster the prevention of conflicts, and to improve stability in cyberspace. France supports the work underway at the First Committee of the UN General Assembly in order to continue the development of this normative framework. In order to support its implementation, France has proposed a structure for this, for a future ambitious mechanism for a program of action on cyberspace. The Security Council must put the respect of the normative framework for responsible state behavior at the heart of its work on cyber threats and encourage states to implement their commitments to contribute to cyber security and stability. Beyond this, the Security Council must also continue its efforts to include cyber issues in the different dimensions of its mandate. It is crucial that the Council is able to receive regular presentations from experts on the evolution of cyber threats and their implications for international peace and security. Today's debate is an excellent example of this. This Council must also continue to pay attention to the use of cyber means to circumvent sanctions regimes. malicious cyber activities undertaken by the North Korean regime to finance their programs for weapons of mass destruction here merit ongoing attention. France remains mobilized to ensure that the Council, despite the non-extension of the group of mandate of the 1718 group of experts, continues to ensure vigilance of violations of these resolutions. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of France, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Mamadou Tangara, Minister for Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Gambians Abroad of the Gambia.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Excellency Cho Tae-yul, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea and President of the Security Council for the month of June. Excellencies, I would like first and foremost to thank the briefers for the enlightening briefs they presented to us and commend and congratulate the Republic of Korea for organizing this session. We stand today at a crossroad. The digital age has woven a web of connection, opportunity, and progress. Yet within this very fabric lurks a growing darkness threatening international peace and security. The ever-evolving threat of cybercrime is not merely a matter of financial gain or stolen data. The new wave of cyber threats directly challenges international peace and security, demanding our urgent attention. In this connection, we thank the Republic of Korea for drawing our attention to another innovative engagement of the Security Council with a view to exchanging substantive insights on the maintenance of international peace and security, addressing evolving menaces in cyberspace. The Security Council, as the body entrusted with maintaining international peace and security, cannot afford to remain silent, and we commend you for your continued efforts in sounding the alarm on this important and common issue. We need a comprehensive approach that addresses this evolving menace. In this regard, I wish to suggest the following 3 points to support our joint efforts in curbing cyber-related international peace and security threats. 1, the Security Council must become a champion for exemplary norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace, and we can achieve this by raising awareness regularly to foster related cybersecurity discussions with a view to amplifying the work of the UN General Assembly cyber forums, and working with member states to translate norms into action, promoting capacity building and information sharing to deter malicious activity. 2, the Security Council can strengthen accountability for cyber-related security menaces by advocating for improved cyber capabilities of member states to identify malign actors and build a unified front against impunity. 3, the Security Council can leverage the expertise of UN agencies like the UN Office of Disarmament Affairs and the UN Office of Counterterrorism to adequately address the menace of undermining sustainable international peace, security, and democracy. Collaborating with these agencies can also lead to coordination to avoid duplication and ensure a holistic approach that is fit for purpose. Mr. President, these actions undertaken within the Council's mandate will not only promote international peace and security, but also strengthen existing efforts by advancing awareness, promoting accountability, and collaborating effectively among states and related international institutions. The Security Council is therefore well situated to become a leader in building a more secure and stable cyberspace for all. We must elevate the discussion and regularly integrate cyber menaces into our deliberations concerning regional conflicts and thematic issues. This amplifies the work of the United Nations General Assembly forums dedicated to cyber norms. We must also encourage member states to translate these norms into concrete action. This includes building capacity for cyber defense, promoting information sharing, and deterring malicious activities. Mr. President, in conclusion, I must commend once again the Republic of Korea for this laudable initiative that provides the opportunity for member states to participate in this very important and topical issue of common concern. The Security Council is central to the much-needed critical support required to mitigate and end cyber-related international peace and security menaces. I thank you all.
I thank His Excellency Minister Tangara for his statement, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Tobias Lindner, Minister of State of Germany.
Mr. President, Germany thanks the Republic of Korea for its leadership role in bringing cybersecurity issues to the attention of the Security Council, and I would also like to thank the Secretary General and all briefers for their enlightening contributions. The international community is exposed to a growing number of both state-sponsored and private malicious cyber activity incidents. These incidents have a serious impact on the maintenance of international peace and security. Severe attacks by cybercriminals, including ransomware attacks, have shown that these attacks have the potential to threaten the stability of state institutions. They have affected entire societies. A recent trend is the emergence of hacktivist groups in the theater of international conflicts who attack key critical infrastructure targets. This has eroded trust in the delivery of public services and spread fear among civilians. The increasing cooperation of a number of state actors with private IT companies, hacktivist groups, and cybercriminals has further exacerbated existing risks. All these trends serve as threat multipliers, given that the cyber domain extends conventional battlefields far into the civilian domain. In light of this dramatically evolving threat landscape, Germany proposes the following 4 areas where the UN Security Council should become active. First, we see an important role for the Security Council in assessing the threat, both following Article 34 of the UN Charter, which gives the Security Council the authority to investigate any situation that might lead to international friction or give rise to a dispute. And in a more general view, in the sense that the Council should consider and analyze more deeply the risks emanating from cyber attacks for international peace and security. Secondly, the Security Council has an important dispute resolution role based on the full applicability of the UN Charter to cyberspace. Thirdly, we see potential for the Security Council to have a strong trust and norm-building role by putting international cyber conflicts on its agenda, by investigating situations of cyber conflict, or through facilitating their peaceful settlement. The Council will contribute to building the evolving framework of responsible state behavior in cyberspace. This must be based on international law and complemented by voluntary UN norms and confidence-building measures. And finally, Germany would welcome efforts by the Security Council to mainstream cybersecurity threats into its agenda. This should encompass protecting the United Nations from being the target of malicious cyber attacks, in particular their presence in the field, such as peacekeeping operations. Mr. President, in closing, I would like to stress that Germany will continue to contribute to the international discussion on this important issue. To highlight just one example, last year we launched a global dialogue format on cyber and conflict. It seeks to specifically address the increased risks to civilians posed by the use of cyber tools in international conflict, to raise awareness and to formulate mitigating options. The next event in this series will be held here in New York at the German House on July the 8th in cooperation with Japan, Senegal, and the International Committee of the Red Cross. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank His Excellency Minister Lindner for his statement, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Omran Sharaf, Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs for Advanced Science Technology of the United Arab Emirates.
감사합니다, 사장님. Mr. President, I thank His Excellency Mr. Cho Tae-yul, Minister of Foreign Affairs, for chairing this open debate and commend the Republic of Korea for its stewardship of the Security Council this month. I also thank the Secretary General and the other briefers for their insightful contribution. As we heard today, threats to cyberspace are evolving rapidly. Malicious cyber tools and techniques, such as ransomware, phishing, and denial of service attacks, are being used to target government and private sectors networks, threatening critical infrastructure and public safety. This is especially concerning as our nations, including the UAE, undergo digital transformation, making us more reliant on secure online systems. Educational institutions are also at risk, with educational digital infrastructure and valuable information assets being targeted by malicious actors. Furthermore, the malicious use of information and communication technology, ICT, including but not limited to emerging AI technologies, acts as threat multipliers in existing conflicts. Being a global hub for technology and innovation, the UAE established the Cybersecurity Council in 2020. The Council aims to achieve a safer digital transformation and improve cybersecurity in the country for all targeted sectors. We are committed to capacity building and information sharing with our partners, as well as promoting the responsible design of technology and using AI for good to combat the spread and amplification of hate speech, misinformation, and disinformation. In line with this commitment, together with Albania, we hosted an ARIA formula in December 2023 to address these challenges. With this in mind, I would like to offer 4 points for consideration. First, international law must guide the use of cyber technologies. The UN Charter, sovereignty, non-interference in the internal affairs of state responsibility, and the laws of armed conflict must be respected, including the UN norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace. Addressing normative gaps requires continued and convergences on how to uphold and maintain international law in the cyber domain. Second, the UAE supports mainstreaming cyber concerns within the Council's work on international peace and security. This could include referencing cyber-related concerns, trends and developments in briefings, statements and priority issues more regularly, as well as in relation to country-specific and other thematic files. For instance, Resolution 2341 recognizes the necessity of protecting critical infrastructure against terrorist attacks, including cybersecurity, underscoring the need to better address the broad spectrum of cyber threats that come with digitization and cyberspace. Third, the Council should consider convening an annual briefing on emerging technology threats and their implications for international peace and security. Furthermore, the publication of an annual cybersecurity report by the Secretary General will provide a comprehensive assessment of the global cyber threat landscape and recommendations for enhancing international cooperation. This should also include gender analysis to better respond to threats in cyberspace targeting women and girls. Fourth, fostering strong public-private partnership is crucial for leveraging expertise and resources to counter cyber threats effectively. The UAE is committed to collaborating with the private sector to develop robust cybersecurity tools and build national and international capabilities, along with supporting the private sector in ensuring the secure and responsible design of their solutions. Mr. President, harnessing cyber technologies is crucial for our future, but vigilance against their risks is essential. International cooperation and capacity building are vital for global security resilience. The UAE will continue to advance responsible behavior in cyberspace and ensure it reflects our collective aspiration for peace and security.
I thank His Excellency Minister Sharp for his statement. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Madame Des Melbart, Parliamentary Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Latvia.
Mr. President, Latvia would like to express our gratitude to the Republic of Korea for organizing this Security Council's high-level open debate. And we would also like to thank the Secretary General as well as briefers from Cyber Peace Institute and Leeds Beckett University for their insightful presentations. Mr. President, use and reliance of digital technology has grown significantly since the cyber security-related matters were first introduced in the UN's agenda more than 20 years ago. Today, the cyber domain has become connective tissue of the global economic and social development. While providing vast opportunities for progress, the expansion of cyberspace has also been linked with rising of risks and challenges. In the recent years, we have been encountering several negative trends in regard to international peace and security. There is a growing number of cases where critical infrastructure, including critical information infrastructure, has been targeted in cyber attacks, threatening with catastrophic real-world consequences. Furthermore, we have witnessed cyber attacks to become an integral part of Russia's full-scale aggression against Ukraine. Cyber threats often intersect with other hostile acts, such as the spread of disinformation and misinformation, as well as malicious use of artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies. Cybercrime is rampant as well, with ransomware payments hitting record high in 2023. These developments affect global peace and security. The global community needs to coordinate its response, and the Security Council has a role to play in line with its mandate. Therefore, Latvia believes that threats and challenges in cyberspace would merit regular deliberations in the Council. Such discussions could be informed by a periodic report by the Secretary General. Increasing Council's attention to cybersecurity could also facilitate integration of cyber-related aspects in other thematic mandates, such as peacekeeping in women, peace and security. The Council should also look into strengthening its ability to respond to large-scale cyber attacks with potential international security implications. Mr. President, it is evident that developing more robust role of the Council in addressing cybersecurity matters cannot be accomplished in one day. This is a step-by-step endeavor, and meetings like the one today play a critical role facilitating this process. It is also clear that the Council should not replace the work already done in other UN formats under the General Assembly. Quite the opposite. The Council should reinforce the understanding reached in these formats, in particular the applicability of the international law in its entirety of cyberspace. There is also more work to be done collectively in implementing the framework of responsible state behavior in cyberspace. Anticipating the establishment of a permanent UN mechanism to address cybersecurity known as Programme of Action, we see potential for new synergies between the Council and the General Assembly in this field. Mr. President, in conclusion, I would like to underline Latvia's commitment to continue supporting efforts within the UN to address growing cybersecurity threats and challenges. We have been actively engaged in discussions on this topic in the General Assembly bodies, and we will also continue to advocate for a larger role of the Council. I thank you for your attention.
I thank Her Excellency Madame Melbart for her statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Egypt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Egypt attaches great importance to the international security aspects of information and telecommunications technologies and strongly calls for a central and leading role by the United Nations in promoting and developing rules and principles for the use of ICTs by states through an inclusive and equitable process with the participation of all states. A number of states are developing ICT capabilities for possible malicious uses and offensive military purposes. The use of ICTs in future conflicts between states is becoming a reality, and the risk of harmful ICT attacks against critical infrastructure is both real and serious. This new arms race has far-reaching ramifications on international peace, security, and stability. especially as the lines between conventional and non-conventional weapons continue to erode. Furthermore, the relevant technologies developed by states are being transferred, copied, or reproduced by terrorists and criminals. The malicious use of ICTs by terrorist and criminal organizations is a serious threat to international peace and security, especially in light of the attribution-related challenges. Under international law and the UN Charter, all member states should refrain from any act that knowingly or intentionally damages or otherwise impairs the use and operation of the critical infrastructure of other states, as well as interfering in their internal affairs. There is no doubt that the international security aspects of ICTs have become too important and strategic to be left without clear binding rules at the international level. An inclusive process within the UN system is the best and most efficient way to establish arrangements that are equitable, comprehensive, and effective in this domain. Mr. President, the UN has already taken some steps towards establishing a normative framework that complements the principles of international law. With the adoption by consensus of 2 annual progress reports of the open-ended working group established pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 75/240, as well as other consensual reports of UN-related processes, the UN has already established the initial elements of a framework for conflict prevention and stability in cyberspace. The GA called on member states to be guided in their use of ICTs by the cumulative and evolving framework for responsible state behavior contained in the consecutive reports of the groups of governmental experts under the first committee. However, the implementation of these norms remains quite minimal at best, namely due to their voluntary nature and the lack of any follow-up mechanism. While acknowledging the progress made in the open-ended working group on 75/240 in different aspects of its mandate, it is important that it lays the ground for a future mechanism under the UN auspices that is action-oriented, single-track, consensus-based, and inclusive, building upon the agreed outcomes of UN-related processes, focusing on A, implementing the agreed outcomes including the framework for responsible state behavior, B, further development of this framework, and C, promoting international cooperation and assistance to developing countries. Inclusive processes within the UN, primarily under the auspices of the GA, are the most efficient way to establish equitable, comprehensive, and effective arrangements in this domain. For its part, the Security Council is encouraged to take into account the opportunities offered by emerging technologies while considering topics such as peacekeeping and counter-terrorism. Nevertheless, the Council should not be utilized as a legislative body that attempts to set norms and rules on behalf of the UN member states on matters that necessarily require inclusive and transparent processes. Mr. President, the recommendations which have been endorsed by the GA by consensus can form the basis for politically or legally binding rules, especially that they are derived from the principles of international law and the UN Charter. While we believe that international law and the principles of the Charter do apply to all domains, including cyberspace, we also believe that there is a pressing need to identify specific obligations that make state behavior in cyberspace consistent with international law and the objectives and principles of the UN Charter. Mr. President, in an increasingly connected world, any international regime on cybersecurity will only be as strong as its weakest link. Fortunately, there is consensus that capacity-building efforts have to be intensified and strengthened to prevent potential attacks against critical infrastructure and to develop the capabilities and technical skills needed in developing countries. The UN should lead a coordinated effort towards the provision of the necessary assistance to developing countries. In conclusion, Mr. President, ICTs offer massive opportunities and challenges, and we underscore that there is a pressing need to identify and develop rules for responsible state behavior to increase stability and security in the global ICT environment and prevent cyberspace from becoming another arena for conflicts and arms race. Thank you for listening.
I thank the representative of Egypt for their statement. I wish to remind all speakers to limit their statements to no more than 3 minutes in order to enable the Council to carry out its work expeditiously. Flashing lights on the colors of the microphones will prompt speakers to bring their remarks to a close after 3 minutes. I now give the floor to the representative of Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the Republic of Korea's Security Council presidency for convening this high-level open debate. We also extend our appreciation to the Secretary General and other briefers for their remarks. Ukraine aligns itself with the EU statement and would like to make some remarks on our national capacity. We strongly believe that the Security Council plays an important role in addressing threats to international peace and security, including in cyberspace. The cyber threat landscape continues to evolve and has become even more challenging than ever before. Ransomware has been an increasingly common and significant risk to government, businesses, and individuals. In addition, we are witnessing the increased number of malicious cyber operations targeting critical infrastructure and critical information infrastructure, including the energy sector, public services, and electoral processes. Some state actors continue to undermine the international rules-based order and the framework of responsible state behavior in cyberspace by conducting malicious cyber activities. In this regard, the DPRK has been engaged in cyber espionage and cryptocurrency theft aimed at further developing its nuclear and WMD programs in violation of relevant UN Security Council resolutions. Recently, Russia's cyber espionage group APT-28 conducted cyber attacks against a number of EU member states. Ukraine has been facing Russia's aggression, including in cyberspace. Since the beginning of the war, Russia's cyber attacks have been growing more sophisticated and targeting government and security agencies, businesses, and financial institutions. Moscow's cyber criminals conducting phishing attacks, cyber espionage, attacks against critical infrastructure, as well as spreading disinformation and propaganda. In order to effectively prevent, combat, and mitigate cyber threats, Ukraine actively cooperates with international partners to build an effective cyber capacity building, which is fundamental for the exercise of the right of self-defense in cyberspace. In addition, Ukraine has also started to investigate and prosecute cyber attacks as war crimes. Mr. President, states must abide by their international commitments and obligations, including in the context of the security of the use of ICTs. As we reaffirmed here at the United Nations, international law, including the UN Charter, is applicable in cyber domain. Therefore, all state actors who act contrary to the agreed framework should be held to account. To conclude, we encourage the UN member states to continue working together on strengthening and implementing the normative framework of responsible state behavior, raising awareness and exchanging best practices in response to the existing and emerging threats in cyber domain. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Ukraine for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Estonia.
President, we welcome today's exchange of views and thank the briefers, Secretary General in particular, for their most valuable insights. Estonia aligns with a statement to be delivered by the European Union. Allow me to make a few observations on my national capacity. President, we cannot ignore the increasing sophistication and damage caused by malicious cyber incidents carried out by both state and non-state actors, with high-profile targets such as critical infrastructure, financial institutions, and democratic processes, cross-border nature of the incidents, as well as increasing capacities. Cyber attacks are able to cause higher and higher damages. Therefore, cybersecurity is clearly part of both national and international security challenges, and preventing and mitigating such threats are our common priority. Russia's aggression against Ukraine has highlighted how cyber operations are intertwined with kinetic warfare acts. We have witnessed how Ukrainian critical infrastructure is targeted by Russia in violation of international humanitarian law. Russia's actions have underscored the need to focus on the comprehensive approach to national defense and internal security. In order to strengthen Ukraine's readiness and resistance to cyber attacks, Estonia has actively supported Ukraine on cyber domain bilaterally as well as through the Tallinn mechanism and IT coalition. We are also deeply concerned by the latest news coming from Pyongyang, suggesting deeper case military cooperation with Russia has been further enhanced in gross violation of corresponding UN Security Council resolutions. Estonia strongly condemns ongoing deeper case malicious cyber activities, which aim to fuel deeper case weapon program, destabilize regional security, and threaten global peace. President, the UN framework of responsible state behavior in cyberspace builds upon existing international law. International law, in particular the UN Charter, the law of state responsibility, international human rights law, and international humanitarian law, fully applies to cyber operations. We need to work together to uphold international law and ensure adherence to it also in cyberspace. In order to support the implementation of a framework of responsible state behavior in cyberspace, Estonia advocates for the establishment of an inclusive and action-oriented program of action as a single permanent structure after the end of the current open-ended working group in 2025. President, open, secure, stable, accessible, and peaceful ICT environment cannot be taken for granted, and it is not separate from the physical world. While Russia's aggression against Ukraine has showcased the integrated nature of cyber attacks and the kinetic warfare, we believe that this will be a pattern used also in future conflicts. Therefore, the Security Council has a substantial role to play in serving as a venue for sharing information on existing and future cyber threats, as well as raising awareness on the strategic implication of cybersecurity, which Estonia underlined already during our UN Security Council tenure. In conclusion, for this reason, Estonia commends the Republic of Korea for holding the current discussion in this chamber where it belongs. Open discussions on cybersecurity such as this will be essential for supporting the enhancement of domestic, regional, and global cyber resilience by contributing to the prevention as well as mitigating of cyber conflicts. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Estonia for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Czechia.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And first of all, I would like to thank the Republic of Korea for organizing this highly relevant open debate. We welcome today's discussion on the Council's role in the field of cybersecurity, particularly regarding the implementation of the agreed framework for responsible behavior of states in cyberspace. Needless to say, we share many concerns and warnings expressed here today. We are particularly concerned about attacks on critical infrastructure, cyber espionage, ransomware attacks against both public and private institutions, including the healthcare sector, cryptocurrency thefts, and efforts to gain persistent access to critical industrial systems, not only for espionage and intellectual property thefts, but also with the aim to be able to control them in an openly hostile manner. The increasing use of information and communications technologies in armed conflicts and their harmful effects on civilians are alarming. These irresponsible acts endanger international peace and security, for which the Security Council bears responsibility. Similarly, cyberspace is being used more and more to spread disinformation, exacerbate existing social conflicts, and even to incite terrorist attacks. The Council, along with the relevant UN fora and other international organizations addressing the cyber agenda, should intensify their efforts to find effective ways to address these less obvious malicious activities in cyberspace. They should also work to raise awareness of the true scale of these threats and facilitate activities that promote greater resilience. Mr. President, in May, Czechia, in coordination with Germany and other states, publicly condemned the activities of the Russian state-controlled actor APT-28, which had been conducting a long-term cyber espionage campaign in European countries and also targeting Czech government institutions. Such activities are in violation of UN norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace, and we will continue to address them strongly, together with our partners and in accordance with our international obligations. Czechia fully endorses an international order based on international law that promotes an open, secure, stable, accessible, and peaceful ICT environment. We reiterate our support for the establishment of a permanent, single-track, inclusive, and action-oriented mechanism under the auspices of the UN upon the conclusion of the current open-ended working group in 2025. We believe the program of action on cybersecurity could serve as such a mechanism. Finally, Mr. President, I would like to reiterate that my country remains committed to being an active participant in what must be a truly global partnership to tackle the cybersecurity threats of today and tomorrow. It will indeed require an all-hands-on-deck approach. We are already engaged in deep discussions with a number of countries in Africa, the Indo-Pacific, and Latin America to map out the evolving threat landscape and strengthen our joint response. For instance, at the end of April this year, Czechia organized a seminar in Bogota on the current challenges in the field of criminal activities in cyberspace. We were grateful that experts from Colombia, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Panama attended the event and shared their valuable insights with us. But let me stop here, Mr. President, and thank you again for the opportunity to share my country's views on this important subject.
I thank the representative of Czechia for their statement. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Hedda Samson, the Charge d'Affaires of the Delegation of the European Union to the United Nations.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the European Union and its member states, the candidate countries North Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, Ukraine, the Republic of Moldova, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Georgia, as well as Andorra, align themselves with this statement. Thank you, Mr. President, for organizing this high-level open debate. The European Union welcomes the discussion today to exchange views on the evolving cyber threat landscape and its implications for the maintenance of international peace and security. Statements delivered just now captured a wide range of emerging and evolving threats, from low-impact denial of service attacks to large-scale cyber operations and attacks on critical infrastructure. We add to these concerns the potential cross-border impact that may arise from malicious cyber activity. We also note the blurred lines between criminal activities and state-sponsored attacks, using cyber criminals for hire, making the already difficult task of attribution all the more challenging. It must be our joint commitment to strengthen our toolkit for collective resilience, and we welcome other delegations sharing their insights and their experiences. Mr. President, the EU and its member states are alarmed by the number, sophistication, and scale of malicious cyber activities targeting government institutions and democratic processes. Last month, Germany shared its assessment that Russia-linked cyber espionage group APT28 compromised email accounts of its German Social Democratic Party. State institutions, agencies, and entities in EU member states, including in Czechia, Poland, Lithuania, Slovakia, and Sweden, were targeted by the same threat actor before. These malign activities must stop. The UN norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace provide guidance in this regard. The main commitments are straightforward. International law applies in cyberspace. States are expected to uphold voluntary norms of state behavior. States must prevent the misuse of cyber in their territory. Practical confidence-building measures are needed to help reduce the risk of escalation and conflict stemming from cyber incidents. For the EU, focusing on the development and implementation of the agreed framework for responsible state behavior in cyberspace is crucial if we are to fulfill our shared responsibility in line with our common interests and protect all states from the risks of malicious cyber activity. States can make meaningful progress by clarifying the application of existing international law and discussing the implementation and adherence to existing norms of responsible behavior. For the agreed framework of responsible state behavior to be effective, we must uphold it together. This reinforces the importance of establishing a permanent, inclusive, action-oriented mechanism under the auspices of the UN. We therefore support the creation of a program of action and hope to agree on modalities already this summer. Mr. President, we look forward to further advancing discussions on this important topic, and we welcome efforts such as this to highlight the important role of the Security Council in fulfilling its mandate set out by the UN Charter to address threats to international peace and security by highlighting the unique and specific international threats emerging in the cyber domain. We also wish to continue exploring how the Council's future work can effectively complement other relevant UN processes in this regard. I thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ms. Samson for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, honorable ministers, distinguished members of the Security Council, the Philippines takes this opportunity to re-emphasize the critical importance of addressing ICT threats within international security. The rapid advancement of digital technologies poses new challenges that require immediate and concerted action. In this regard, we wish to highlight 3 key points. Number 1, trends in ICT threats. 2, impact of cyber threats to international peace and security. And 3, cyber attacks as a threat multiplier. Now, back to trends in ICT threats. The rise of AI-powered robocalls for fraud, the proliferation of deepfakes and misinformation, and ransomware attacks present significant risks and complex challenges. Comprehensive strategies are essential to counteract these sophisticated threats. The malicious use of AI in cyberspace poses profound risks. We must prioritize assessing these threats to develop robust cybersecurity policies